All right.
All right.
Welcome to podcast 3. Here
We made it 3 weeks.
we have made it 3 weeks somehow. And the good news is it's somewhat taking shape.
Absolutely.
Which I like. We're still in the candy series, and there's still just as many references to candy as ever.
I mean, there was only, I think, one Reese's reference this week as opposed to the other weeks.
Are you sure there was only one? Felt like there were at least 2.
There might have been 2 or 3. Who knows? I mean, they just kind of pop out. But we had chocolate-covered crickets this week, if you missed that.
Chocolate-covered cricket. Okay, so I have had chocolate-covered crickets before, and, I am one of those people that, I do not mind eating weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Totally fine with it. Especially, weird seafood, things like
you
that.
Do like squid,
octopus, squid. Calamari is pretty mainstream.
Calamari, yeah, that's true.
That's technically,
if it's fried,
it just is squid. But yeah, I don't think that's that weird. But I've had octopus. I've had eel. I've had all the things, and I don't even think that's that weird. But other weird things, different parts of the animal that people are not normally
tongue
that kind of thing. Totally had that. But when it comes to bugs, I struggle.
It's weird. Yeah. No, I mean, what are they? They're just all. I mean, bugs are associated with uncleanliness and filth. So
that's not even what it is. I'm like, there's nothing, for whatever reason. I can look at a crab, which objectively looks like a big bug.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it looks good. I will eat that. Same thing with lobsters are gross looking.
Lobsters are actually bottom feeders. Yeah.
Yeah, crawdads. They look gross, but I'm like, I will go to crawfish boil
all day, every day.
I love it, and it's about to be crawfish season, so you betcha it's gonna happen.
Well, so interesting. So I'm wondering if this is a cultural thing of. In our culture, bugs are just anathema to eat. But there was this story that I read about how lobsters used to just literally wash up on the shore on the East Coast, and they were so prevalent that it was like eating trash. And they used
I've heard that lobsters were poor people food.
Yeah.
And then some switch happened in the 60s or something like that. And then lobsters became fancy eating. And
now it's $30 a tail or something like that. Yeah. So
R.I.P. Red Lobster.
Cheddar Bay biscuits are pretty. That was the only thing I really remember about Red Lobster was the Cheddar Bay biscuits.
They were pretty unstoppable.
Yeah.
I can definitely gain some weight on some of those. So to jump right in, you mentioned something that I don't know if I remembered this detail or not, but baptizing on the side of the road.
Yeah. Acts chapter 8.
You said it was Philip, I think?
Yeah, Philip is kind of led by the Holy Spirit to walk. At the end of the story, he's mysteriously whisked away. At the beginning of the story, he's led by the Holy Spirit. It's crazy. Yeah.
Mysteriously whisked away.
If you read it, it's almost like he apparated out of thin air to go back
Harry
up
Potter
to
reference, by the way.
Harry Potter reference, yes. But at the beginning of the story, the Holy Spirit calls him to go to this road, and it's after one of the big feasts in Jerusalem, and there is an Ethiopian. He's a eunuch. He's a court official, and they would be
Philip is a eunuch?
No, the Ethiopian official.
Oh.
So they'd be castrated, so they only did their court duties, and they were loyal to the king or the queen. So he's there, so we assume that he's Jewish or Jewish adjacent on some level, or at least curious. And he wouldn't have been allowed to worship actually in the temple. He would have been in the court of the Gentiles probably, or the foreigners at least. And he's reading Isaiah on his scroll, on his chariot, riding back. And Philip sees him and says, "Hey, you know what you're reading?" And he's like, "How can I? I've never read this before. No one's ever explained it to me." And Philip gets in the chariot, explains it all, and tells him about the Messiah. And so this guy's like, "Well, hey, why can't I be a part of that right now? Can we just do it in the puddle over there?" And Philip's like, "Yeah." So it's actually one of the, I got in a debate in college about baptism.
Ooh, let's go.
And it was...
baptism can be a shockingly controversial subject.
It's crazy. And so, I mean, I grew up a church kid, and I was not in the process of becoming ordained at that point, but I was thinking about it. And baptism is done by an elder in the United Methodist Church or a priest in the Catholic Church or whatever. It's always been like you have to have the official guy or woman to do this. And one of my friends was just as non-denominational Baptist as you can ever get. And he was just like, no. Or I think, oh, yeah, it was actually a woman. She said, yeah, my brother's going to baptize me this weekend. And I was like, hold on, that doesn't work. And we got in this whole conversation. And afterward, I felt really bad because I was like totally like poo-pooing on her baptism experience, which I would never do anymore. But
because I've been to so many, baptisms like where they will do a full baptism service, a worship service where the majority of worship is baptisms, and you are baptized like the popular thing now. I don't know if that's offensive to call it the popular thing.
I mean, there are trends.
The thing now is that the person who helped bring you to know Jesus is the person who baptizes you, which makes total sense to me. Is there an official Methodist stance on this, or is it more like this is just kind of what the Methodists do, but it's not like hardcore enforced or something?
I would say no. So I don't know about hardcore enforced because I'm not sure how prevalent anything else would be, but yeah, we have like an elder. Now a deacon has sacramental authority in the church that they're in, but an elder, like an ordained pastor, has to be the one to do the baptism. And the reason for that is this kind of protection or proper administration of the sacraments, which...
So does that also apply to communion?
Well, and that's so communion, communion I actually think is valid for, because communion is supposed to be open and available to everybody.
Yes.
And if you're like doing it in secret, or you're like only going to invite your friends over, then it may be like really meaningful to you and your friends. But how often when we're thinking about who to invite to a party are we intentionally leaving somebody out? So if you were getting people together for beers and chips and you were thinking like, okay, as long as John doesn't come, this is going to be fun, right? I'll say David.
I am a kind of loud person. Right? I get it.
So if you're getting people together and like, all right, we're going to do communion together, and you haven't made it available to everybody, then, that's not the gist of communion. Now, baptism, though, we have this biblical account of Philip just doing it on the side of the road.
Yeah, that kind of throws a wrench in this thing where you have to be whatever. And it also kind of throws a wrench in the idea that Jesus he spent quite a while trying to say, no.
Yeah.
Just because you think, I'm just an ordinary whatever person, that I don't do churchy things. I do this job over here. I'm a fisherman, or I'm a whatever. Like, it's like, no, yes, you can do this.
Right.
And so biblically speaking, I don't think I agree with the notion that you have to be, because like that's a man saying to saying, oh, now you are worthy of that. Like, come on.
I agree. That's why I remember emailing with my senior pastor at the time, and he was like, well, this is kind of him and on. It's like, so when it brass nuts, like when it comes down to it,
if you found somebody on the side of the road and they're like, I need to be baptized, like I'm like, I feel very confident in, my faith, my upbringing, the fact that, I've worked at church as a career path for my entire adult life. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to baptize this person in that moment, because that's what needs to happen. That's what Jesus called his disciples to do. And so, Well, I think it seems weird to say, no, you can't.
Well, and that's what he was saying, is like, when it comes down to it, right, we're introducing people to Christ, we're welcoming into the family of God. The churchy element is when we're baptizing somebody, if they're an adult, it also is usually associated with church membership.
Sure.
And so that's my purview of membership and what that means. And if I was super strict like other people, then church membership would be like, all right, you're giving your small group whatever. Like you have, like if I was John Wesley, I'd be super strict about it. Obviously not that strict about it, as long as, people have been here once in the last 4 years.
Sure. I mean, you don't want to just be like, Oprah Winfreying it. You're baptized. You're baptized. You're baptized. That would kind of take away some of the meaningfulness. But.
Right. And again, like, I'll say this right to the camera. Anybody can do anything in Creekwood. If you're baptized, not baptized, member, non-member, like,
don't
we're
say
open to everybody.
Anything. That
you can't do the leadership board, vote on trustee matters. And you can't vote at church conference, and you can't be on the leadership board. That's it. Other than that, you can take communion, you can come to worship, you can be in a small group, you can serve on missions.
Yeah, I don't get the vibe that we're just like this extremely dogmatic, everything by the rules. Like,
No, not at all.
that's good.
Yeah, we do our best. I mean, there are you can see why some of the structure's in place, but we certainly don't follow all of it. Bishop, if you're listening, just turn it off.
Don't do it. Watch the whole thing. Tell everyone about it. So that actually is kind of nice it nicely transitions into, you said a phrase that multiple times, in fact, that I was like, I like that. And it was, be brave enough to ask questions. And you said it a couple of different ways, but ultimately that was the phrase. And I think that that's an interesting notion. Like, where asking a question requires bravery. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a different way of looking at it. And because we ask questions constantly, whether it's in our head, out loud, to our spouse, our friend, whatever. But questions requiring bravery. Never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I mean, so have you ever been in a conversation where people just share facts back and forth, or they share knowledge that they've learned back and forth? And,
you mean what we do?
I mean, I guess what we do, yeah. I wasn't thinking about that, but yeah, it feels like, I mean, I do it too. I feel like a lot of us just exist in the world of wanting to look better than we really are, perhaps, or just we want people to think that we're authority on whatever, and any chink in the armor.
I don't necessarily know that that's why I do it. I tend to share facts, or at least I think this is why I do it. Like, I'm analyzing it in my brain. I do it, I think, because I'm excited about the fact. I was like, this is interesting information. You should know this too.
Right.
I equate it to if I go to a banging restaurant, then I'm like, yo,
I gotta share this.
You have got to go to Burger Schmurger. It's in Dallas. Best smash burger in DFW.
I just read about this. It sounds amazing.
We went a couple weekends ago.
Oh, okay.
It's so good. It's everything you want. A smash burger, double patty, double cheese. You just get the schmurger.
Nice.
That's what they call it. Their fries are excellent. Just get a big Coke. Get the schmurger.
Just go for it.
And they bring you out a bunch of little ramekin style things that have different sauces. So you can choose whatever sauce you want for an aioli or a mayo or a spicy mayo, whatever. And there's 6
nice
that you can choose. And then all the other ones you could use to dip your fries in. It is nuts. But the burger itself.
Usually when we're heading down to Dallas, we're going down to Broadway, Dallas, and we're dressed up. So that sounds like a perfect place to go in our theater clothes.
Dude, Burger Schmurger.
Burger Schmurger. All right.
It's legit. Anyway.
Well, I was thinking, and I guess, I may have been overgeneralizing. I just think, especially when we get in a group and you think about when you were in high school or middle school and the teacher's up there explaining something and you have a question.
That is a little different because you're younger and you're...
Yeah, well, even adults, right? We get in a group and somebody's talking about something and you don't want to be the one person that's like, I don't understand at all. And so you just leave.
I'd love to be that person who's I have no idea what we're talking about.
You're brave, though.
Am I?
I think you are. I mean, you have to have... For people who do what we do, to stand up on stage and boldly proclaim God's word, there has to be a little bit of arrogance inside of us.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like to think of it in terms that it's arrogance. Confidence would be the bigger thing, but I also think that it's very specific confidence, because when Lauren was tasked with going up and doing the announcements. Lauren is an Enneagram 8 and a very strong one. Talk about somebody with confidence. But as soon as she came back and sat down, she was like, I hated that so much. And
I don't think I'm going to ask her. She asked me to not ask her to do that again.
Yeah, she absolutely hated it. And it's a very specific kind of confidence that takes doing what we do, because that confidence doesn't translate across all platforms.
Right.
I am like almost like comically confident in the words that come out of my mouth, and I'm sure I'm wrong, a very large percentage of the time. I'm not going to guess what percentage. I'm sure it's embarrassing, but I still, I try to be, honest about what I do and don't know. If I don't know something, I don't like the idea that I'm just going to start like blabbing anyway.
Yeah.
And I'll catch myself sometimes about to say something that I've heard before, but I'm like, I don't actually know.
I remember appreciating early on when you started working here and you were looking at all the tech in the worship center, and you're a tech guy, you know the ins and outs of videography and how everything hooks up. I remember there was one element and you were like, I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to learn that. And especially being at a job early on, right, for something that you're theoretically hired to be an expert on. Like if someone came to me and was like, I have a question about the Gospel of Matthew, and I was just like, I don't know. I'm going to go look that up. Like that would be something. I've gotten more comfortable with it.
Sure.
But that's where I talk about being brave is, am I brave enough to look stupid in order for it to be a better situation?
I find that to be a very healthy position to take.
Yeah.
Because it requires self-reflection, self-honesty. Do I actually not know this? Like, because you can get, we've all had plenty of encounters with like a narcissistic person who just, they can't be honest with themselves that they don't know something or they can't do something because they're convinced they can do or know everything.
Yeah.
Especially a very overtly ridiculous narcissist. But I don't know. I find the healthier I get, it's like when we were dissecting our Enneagram numbers and learning about that, one of the things that I remember discovering that was very helpful for me was we have those adjacent numbers that you go to either one of these numbers in stress.
Right.
Healthy stress, you go here. Unhealthy stress, you go here. So for a 3, healthy stress, you go to a 6, and unhealthy, you go to a 9.
Right.
And I realized, when I'm in an unhealthy place and I'm stressed out, I just shut down and I stop talking to people because, 9s are very like
peacemaking and
peacemaking. It's like, I'm just going to like not stir the pot. 6s tend to be let me ask for help, and that is something that I started catching is like when I'm healthy I ask for help.
Oh, interesting.
And I have tried to lean into that, and it often means that I have to go, I don't know how this works, I don't know how to fix this, I kind of know some things but I don't know how to do this, and I need to ask for help so I don't possibly muck this up any further.
Do you think there's some reverse engineering at all on, because I'm the same Enneagram, we're both Enneagram 3s, so I've found myself in similar situations and tend to, like when I'm stressed and my peacekeeping is I'm just going to do it all myself because I know I'll get it done.
Do it all myself. I find
the
isolation is part of that.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm wondering if instead of just saying, oh, okay, I'm healthy and I find myself asking questions, I wonder if it's a spiritual discipline to, when we feel ourselves in unhealth mode, to intentionally ask for help so we get to that place of health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Reverse engineering it, I absolutely think that could be a key to catching it earlier and being able to go, ooh, yes, because people tend to, I find people tend to respond well to vulnerability, and admitting you don't know something is very much a perceivably vulnerable thing. And so people will respond well to that in the notion of, this person's being very vulnerable. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then, can you help me? And especially if it's something that you're like, I actually do know how to do this.
Right.
Because it makes you feel, as the person who is helping, like, I'm in control. I've got this. I could do something good right now. And it's, especially if it's something that you can do and you're very good at.
Well, and if we're talking about like kind of doing church together or doing Jesus together on any level, what I've done, I've said this to staff and I've said it to leadership as well, is every time you asked one of the church members to help you do something, you're helping them live out their discipleship. You're giving them an opportunity. And so if I'm vulnerable and I inquire or I ask or I have to lean on somebody else, well, that makes them valuable, and they see their value in my eyes.
Yes.
And so therefore we can appreciate each other a little bit more. I just think that's all part of the bravery of getting outside of ourselves. Yeah.
So yet another good transitional moment here.
Do my best.
Helping church members in their discipleship journey. You brought up something that is no new idea. However, I'm not sure I've ever seen a church successfully implement it like really well to the point that I'm like, whoa, this church figured it out. The idea that the older generation who is often stuck in their ways, the younger generation who has too much energy and not enough knowledge,
And thinks they know everything sometimes. Yeah.
and trying to create intentional, cross sections where they are helping each other. The younger generation is breathing energy into the older generation and challenging their thoughts, and the older generation is imparting their wisdom and their experience. And you brought that up, in the message on Sunday, and I was like, gosh, I've thought about this so many times, and yet why can't any church seem to like effectively make it happen?
Yeah, I don't know. The only secret sauce is we've been intentional
About to
about
use
it.
the word secret
Yeah,
sauce. Threes, man.
If you look at, so our average age is a little younger than a lot of churches, Methodist churches at least.
Nice.
So which is great. Our average age is a little younger, and so when you get on even things like when we used to have SPR trustees and finance, and now the leadership board, we've intentionally staffed it with at least some people in their 30s, or so that they can bring in the perspective of what church means for a younger population and gain wisdom from those who have been doing it for 50, 60 years. But also we used to have some youth programs, and they still do it on occasion, where the youth and senior adults would get together and they would just have conversation starters. I remember the first time we ever did it, there was a guy named Paul Hyatt who was just a character. And the question was something around, like, how did you get in trouble when you were a kid? And he started sharing stories about, he was an FBI agent, but like there's something about when he was a kid, like putting firecrackers under a police car. It was just one of those things where the teenagers...
You did this, and yet you ended up
Yeah.
FBI. Whoa.
So like the teenagers' eyes were just like, they're real people. They get in trouble and do dumb things too. And I really have to give a lot of the senior adult leaders credit for all of this.
Yeah.
They know how important young people are and are willing to invest in them, in the young people. And by doing that, they're stepping out of, I guess bravely, stepping out of their comfort zone of what they would prefer to go be with young people or to, support them in a way. So it's really been great from the senior adult standpoint around here of people who just, I mentioned Michael Mintz. He almost refuses to recruit adult ushers for the 11 o'clock service because he wants to give the teenagers a chance to do
When you get somebody like Claude who is
too.
working with the youth, and what an unexpected pairing to have Claude be this leader for young men who are coming up into the church, and it just things like that feel unexpected. I want that to become more of a oh, of course,
right.
And I have wanted to have like older role model men that I can call when I'm going through something.
Right.
And I feel very fortunate that I have done that, and I've got a number of men that I've met over the years that I find to be very, very full of wisdom. They're very capable of sharing that wisdom, and they're very good at splitting up listening and knowing when to talk and then how to just deliver the punch without dancing around it, and doing it in such a way that it sticks.
I think this is a great example of where like biblical wisdom and you could say science, I mean, like child development came around, because it used to be, and I know people long for this on some level, but it's like, it used to be, I'm a senior person, I'm an elder, I'm going to tell you what to do and you repeat it and you just do what I did. And then somewhere along the way, we've realized that people of a certain age and generation are just going to be rebellious for a period. So
you can't really shut that off.
Right. So I'm going to tell you what to do. And the more that I get told what to do, the more I'm going to rebel and do the opposite thing. And I think so. Like Deuteronomy 8 talks about tell the story, involve them in the story. And I think we've done a good job of going from I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it because I'm going to tell you the story and you're going to be a part of the story, to let me show you what the story is in my life and let me help you find your place in that story. So it's more of a guide role as opposed to an authoritarian figure. And I think that's where our teenagers and our kids around here have felt loved, is they're included as a part of the story as opposed to just told the story.
I like that.
Yeah.
I can get on board with that. That's where you kind of see, like you mentioned, plugging them in and giving them some sense of responsibility instead of just saying, here's
Right.
the information.
Maybe they're like trying to work on a car and only looking at schematics and diagrams until you get under the hood and someone actually shows you what to do.
Well, I've heard
dirty.
this phrase before. I don't remember where I heard it, but I loved it. It was that information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom. And, these things, while you have to have the prerequisite in order to have this thing, it doesn't mean that you're there.
Yeah.
Information alone doesn't grant you knowledge.
Right.
And knowledge alone doesn't mean you have wisdom.
That's why I love exploration as a core value. Is I always felt like church is more of a learning lab of, okay, we have these values of what heaven is supposed to look like. Let's try them out for a couple hours on Sunday and then see how they work in the real world, and then come back and practice again, and then go try it out again and let people. And if it's messy and if it doesn't work on Sunday, then let's, someone's learning out of that mess.
Oh, absolutely. Being able to openly share, messier times in your life, mistakes, putting firecrackers under a police car, being able to share those kinds of things and have the retrospect and be like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend doing it, but, and then that translating into, okay, I could still do some dumb stuff in this stage of my life, and it's not going to mean that I can't become, what this person that I admire, has become, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that seeing that correlation can be really helpful for sure.
Yeah, I think for sure. So, for whatever reason, I just can't get out of my head. So I'm just going. When you were talking about like narcissistic people who won't ask for help and all of this, and even just I'm trying to decide if this is an exploration or a narcissistic thing. But no one that will grow up now because they have phones and Google Maps will never experience the parent who will not ask for directions, who just drives around aimlessly. They will never get to experience the frustration of that moment. And either we ended up someplace magical that we never would have expected, or our family is not going to talk to each other for the next 3 days because of this experience.
So my dad was a version of that.
Okay.
But not so arrogant that he's like, I know where we're going. So he used to do this thing. My dad used to ride Harleys. And he used to do this thing on the weekends. This is way before Little Elm was any more than just a couple of tiny neighborhoods. And then above Little Elm, Prosper wasn't really a thing. Like all those towns north of there, particularly north of Little Elm and up, I guess that'd be east of Denton. So he used to get on his bike early on Saturdays, like right before the sun came up. And so in the first 10 minutes, the sun's coming up in his ride because it's already hot in Texas. And his goal every Saturday morning was to get lost.
Okay.
On his bike. He had a full tank of gas, and he would just ride around on these 2-lane roads, and he would drive around until he didn't know where he was.
Wow.
And then, because he had, theoretically a few hours before it's like too hot to be on a motorcycle. He would just kind of continue to explore and enjoy the countryside, because that really was the countryside back then. There was just nothing up there.
Say,
Fields, cows, occasional barn.
Right.
And so he did that for years. And so he just knew all of these back roads because he had the intentional and found joy in getting lost.
Yeah. I that's amazing. There have been times I often think like, I just want to go drive. I just want to see, but I found I can't do it. I will always need to have a destination to get to. So it's like driving for driving. It sounds amazing.
I think you and I are in the same boat. I think that's that 3 thing again, because I have threatened myself for so many years that I'm going to go up to like downtown Dallas proper, where there's like all these one-way roads and stuff, and just drive around for like 2 hours until I'm like, I know how this grid system works. And like anytime I do go up to Dallas, I'm like, I got this. I know where things are.
Right.
And I've been telling myself for years and years, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I haven't done it. I haven't done it because there's no destination, and maybe that's complicated.
Right.
But for my brain to go, oh, what are we doing?
Right.
But yeah, dude, I do envy that part of my dad, where there's like that freedom.
So I'm going to turn the tables because you're asking me questions about Sunday. And I was going to ask, because I think people who are watching might be interested in this. But people were coming out of the woodwork yesterday just at 11 o'clock. I mean, they were doing actually, we're getting ovations for hymns at 8:30 now, which is pretty amazing. But
something good's happening.
I mean, people are excited. And at 11 o'clock, I mean, people just came out and they said, oh my gosh, worship was just on fire yesterday. So tell everyone, how are you, like, so when you're planning on worship, what is it about that song and why do you pick it for that moment?
I tend to start with emotion. I need the songs to be to have a cohesive like arc of emotional response, because you will often leave worship not necessarily remembering the songs, but you'll remember how you felt. And you may remember one song or even a lyric, but the feeling, that's the thing that you're going to remember. It's more ingrained in you for whatever reason. And so I try and start there. There are some like just logistical things, like I want songs to have that freedom to transition, and so the key of the song matters. Yeah. So if I find a song where I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'm going to start a set like with this song. If it's in the key of B, then all right, here we go. I'm going to find other songs in the key of B, or possibly C, and then I can shift the first one into B, or I can shift a song in C down to B. Something like that. So there is some logistical, like mathematical reasoning kind of, but as far as like what Sunday was and how it came together, like we've done all those songs before.
Right.
And one of them is on the newer side, but like you can't plan those moments. You can give those moments the best opportunity to happen, but those moments are unplannable. So the band would even tell you while we were doing our run through and going through the songs in practice, like something felt different. Like something's on. And so, oh my God, I'm not gonna poke and prod at this too much, because I don't want it to go away, because that has happened where like practice was killing and then worship was fine or something like that. But
we thought we were amazing.
But I don't think you can, force those moments. They genuinely have to happen organically. And Sunday was one of those weird moments where just the Holy Spirit was in that room doing something. Yeah. And I try to just be open to those moments so that when they start happening, I don't distract from them or screw them up.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was going to say. That's when you kind of turn into the quarterback that just facilitates the game as opposed to trying to make something cool happen because you know that,
I'm not going to be any cooler than the Holy Spirit. So at that point, I'm just like, okay, I'm now part of wherever this is going. And so I'm going to let this happen and just be as dialed in to what's going on as possible. I have to be aware of that. And so if that means that I go a little off script, that has happened. If that means, just stay focused, because there was one song in particular where there was enough going on in that room that I was, getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
The hairs were raising on my own arms, and I was getting, misty eyes over here. And I'm like, I do not lose it, because I've done that before.
Yeah.
I have been in a place where the emotional gripping power of that room got the better of me. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. No. But as somebody who, I take pride in the ability to let's let this continue to build, because it's not about me. And so I should be able to lead through this. There were moments like that. And so I live for those moments. Oh my gosh. I could absolutely, I feel like I could do that every Sunday, but then Sundays like this past Sunday wouldn't be as potent, but I don't know.
I just thought people might be curious. I mean, there's a lot of conversation around worship music right now, and I think it's always interesting to look under the hood and how things come to be like that. And some of it we can plan, and some of it we can't. And
some of it just happens.
Beauty of working in a mysterious thing like God. I mean,
this beautiful mystery.
Right.
I love that. And on that note,
episode
3, thanks for hanging out.
Hope you have a warm day.
Peace.